Can I start or like am I live?
बड़ा है लेकिन वो कोलकाता में जो मिलता है स्पेशल मतलब सेमी क्वांटिटी में 50
Hello, am I live?
Yeah,
Chiranjit? Oh, so I can start.
you can
Uh,
start.
uh, I'm sorry everyone for the small delay due to some technical problems. We had to start the program quite lately, so I'm sorry once again. Respected Principal Sir of Raja Pyari Mohan College, Dr. Sudip Kumar Chakravarti, distinguished speakers, colleagues, students, and all the participants, a very good afternoon to all. It is very heart-wrenching to inform you all that two of our colleagues, Professor Ashutosh Jana and Professor Parthas Sarathi Chatterjee, left us and this world unexpectedly day before yesterday, that is on 18th August. I and the entire college have deepest sympathy for their families. We will remember them in our prayers unexpectedly and may God give strength to their families in these difficult times and God bless them. Now, I would request our principal sir to say a few words. Uh, I've just been informed that due to some technical problem, principal sir could not come online. However, he has sent a condolence message, so I kindly request the support team to play the message. Thank you.
हाँ अच्छा वो तो डीएसपी
We are deeply mourned by the death of our two colleagues very recently. We have lost Professor Ashutosh Jana and Professor Parthasarathi Chatterjee on 18th August 2020. Professor Jana was in the Department of Political Science and retired on 2005. Professor Parthasarathi Chatterjee, around 50, an associate professor and head of the Department of Commerce, has gone forever suddenly with massive cerebral stroke. We pay our respect and homage to their memories at the beginning of the webinar. Being stand still for 1 minute. Thank you all. Now, I congratulate the Department of Political Science and the IQAC of the college for arranging the webinar with such an important contemporary topic. I think it is not the matter of only India and China. I think it is an international crisis. The relation of both countries will affect on the economy of the world. Pakistan, Nepal, Bhutan, all the neighboring countries will also be getting problems directly for the crisis of two big countries of Asia. Instead of this, there is a cultural relation between two countries from Middle Age to modern age, from Huen Shan to Rabindranath Tagore. I think all the backgrounds, all the problems will be revealed with this webinar. I pay my respect to all the speakers, Dr. Apurba Kumar Dey, Professor of our college, Professor Dr. Bhim B. Subba, and Professor Chokey N. Bhutia. I am sure the webinar will be very interesting. Thank you to all the teachers, staffs, and students who will be present in the webinar. Thank you.
Prabhat, you live now. Prabhat, you are live.
Unmute your mic, Prabhat.
Thank you, Principal Sir, for your welcome. Department of Political Science, Raja Peary Mohan College would like to begin by warmly welcoming you all here today in this national webinar titled India-China Relations Before and After Galwan Valley Clash. Before we move on, I request the head of the Department of Political Science, Professor Devarati Das, ma'am, for her inaugural message. But due to some technical problems, she also could not come online. Therefore, I kindly request the support team to play the recorded video message of ma'am.
I, Srimati Debarati Das, Head of the Department of Political Science of Raja Peary Mohan College, cordially welcome all my dear colleagues, friends, my dear students for participating in today's webinar organized by our Department of Political Science along with the IQAC. This webinar is on India-China relations before and after Galwan Valley clash. This is a very burning issue in today's global politics, and this will change the discourse of international relations and will pave a new breakthrough in the changing relations between India and China. India and China are seen as two rising powers in Asia, and hence their enforcement and interference with each other will shape the contours of South Asian politics. Thus, we are all standing on the verge of a new chapter to open. And will enlighten us with their knowledge and speech. I would first mention the name of Dr. Apurba Kumar Dey, Assistant Professor, Department of Bengali, Raja Peary Mohan College, Dr. Bhim B. Subba, Assistant Professor, Department of Political Science, University of Hyderabad, and Ms. Chokey N. Bhutia, Assistant Professor of Political Science, Sikkim Government College. I am thankful to our respected principal at Raja Peary College, Dr. Sudeep Kumar Chakraborty, our IQAC coordinator, Dr. Shantanu Rana, our Senior Associate Professor of Department of Political Science, Professor Niladri Bhattacharya, Assistant Professor of Political Science Department, Dr. Prabhat Lama, and all my other fellow colleagues of my department and the entire MS team of Raja Peary Mohan College for helping us in organizing today's webinar. We shall now begin with the program, and I would request our respected speakers to deliver their speech and enrich our knowledge with their thoughts and ideas.
Thank you, ma'am, for your enriching and enlightening message. I absolutely agree with you, ma'am, and Principal Sir, that the recent India-China crisis is an international crisis and affects other nations as well, primarily when today's world is a globalized and interconnected world. Thank you once again. Furthermore, I, on behalf of Department of Political Science, would like to take this opportunity to extend my sincere thanks to the IQAC coordinator and his team, and also the support team of our college. Without their hard work and helping hand, organizing this webinar would not have been possible. Thank you all. To begin, uh, India and China observed the 70th anniversary of the establishment of their bilateral ties on April 1st, 2020. However, the relation between the two countries has been under tremendous strain due to tensions erupting in the borders, particularly in the Galwan Valley. On 15 June this year, the brutal clash between Indian and the Chinese troops along the line of actual control at Galwan Valley led the first casualties in the borders in several decades. The transgression across the boundaries do occur periodically and typically settled through military and diplomatic protocols. But the recent clashes have highlighted the utter inadequacy of peace measures with the potential to alter Indo-China relations in years to come. So, how has the boundary dispute impacted the relationship between New Delhi and Beijing over the past 3 decades? Furthermore, there has been lack of clarity on the current situation, lack of flow of information, speculations, and other factors like satellite images raises many questions. Therefore, to discuss these questions and more, and also what does the current situation offer to the future of India-China relation, we have with us today three eminent speakers. Welcome to the webinar. I'm honored and delighted to have all of you here. Uh, India-China relations have been full of constant complexities. Therefore, to understand the relation and the current situation and the future relationship between the two countries, it is very important to delve into the history. Thus, our first speaker is Dr. Apurba Kumar Dey. Welcome, sir. Uh, Let me introduce Dr. Apurba Kumar Dey. Dr. Apurba Kumar Dey is an associate professor in the Department of Bengali at the Raja Peary. He is also a guest lecturer at Ravindra Bharati in Ravindranath Tagore and his works. His works has been published in numerous reputed journals. Apart from excelling in academics, he is also a dramatist and a theatre activist. Welcome, sir. Sir, it's over to you.
Yes, Apurba.
অত্যন্ত গুরুত্বপূর্ণ আমি yes বলো ঠিক আছে
Okay, বলো।
Oh,
শোনা যাচ্ছে তো
Yes, ঠিক, হ্যাঁ, বলো।
আন্তর্জালিক এক আলোচনা সভার আয়োজন করেছে এই আলোচনা সভার শিরোনাম হচ্ছে ইন্ডিয়া চায়না রিলেশন বিফোর অ্যান্ড আফটার গলওয়ান ভ্যালি ক্লাস। আমি প্রথমেই রাজা প্যারিমোহন কলেজের মাননীয় অধ্যক্ষ ডক্টর সুদীপ কুমার চক্রবর্তী মহাশয়, আইকিউসির কোঅর্ডিনেটর ডক্টর শান্তনু রানা, রাষ্ট্রবিজ্ঞান বিভাগের সম্মানীয় অধ্যাপক অধ্যাপিকাবৃন্দ, আমার সহ আলোচক ডক্টর ভীম বি সুব্বা, হায়দ্রাবাদ বিশ্ববিদ্যালয়ের রাষ্ট্রবিজ্ঞানের অধ্যাপক, শ্রীমতী চৌকি এন ভুটিয়া, সিকিম গভর্নমেন্ট কলেজের রাষ্ট্রবিজ্ঞানের অধ্যাপিকা, আমাদের কলেজের সমস্ত অধ্যাপক অধ্যাপিকা, শিক্ষাকর্মী বন্ধু এবং স্নেহের ছাত্রছাত্রীদের আমার প্রীতি, শুভেচ্ছা এবং ভালোবাসা জানিয়ে প্রথমে একটা কথা বলা দরকার যে আজকের এই আলোচনা সভায় কিছু বলতে পেরে আমি যেমন খুব কৃতজ্ঞ প্রত্যেকের কাছেই, এমনকি মাইক্রোসফট টিম যারা কাজ করছে, যে সমস্ত বন্ধুরা ভাইয়েরা, পাশাপাশি ভারাক্রান্ত হৃদয়েই আজকে আমাকে কিছু বলতে হচ্ছে। গত 18 তারিখ আমাদের প্রত্যেকের ওপর দিয়ে একটা শোকের ঝড় বয়ে গেছে। সকালে আমরা দুঃসংবাদটা পেলাম যে আমাদের রাষ্ট্রবিজ্ঞানের প্রাক্তন বিভাগীয় প্রধান, বাগ্মী, সজ্জন মানুষ প্রফেসর আশুতোষ জানা প্রয়াত হয়েছেন। ওইটা যদি ঝড়ের পূর্বাভাস বা প্রাথমিক অবস্থা হয়, রাতে আমফানের মতন বিধ্বস্ত আমাদের মন, যা আমাদের হৃৎপিণ্ডকে একদম পুরো এলোমেলো করে দিয়ে গেল। আমাদের বাণিজ্য বিভাগের বিভাগীয় প্রধান, আমাদের বন্ধু, আমাদের ভাই পার্থ চট্টোপাধ্যায় অকালেই তার জীবন বৃন্ত থেকে ঝরে গেল। আমি আমার আজকের এই আলোচনা সভা বা আমি যা কিছু বলবো, আমি আমার এই দুই প্রণম্য অধ্যাপক দ্বয়ের স্মৃতির উদ্দেশ্যেই উৎসর্গ করছি। চীন এবং ভারতবর্ষের যে সম্পর্ক এবং যে সমস্যা আজকে, যা আন্তর্জাতিক ক্ষেত্রে একটা খুবই সংকট এবং গুরুত্বপূর্ণ সমস্যা, স্বাভাবিক কারণেই এই সমস্যার ক্ষেত্রে আমাদের জাতীয় স্তরেই হোক, আন্তর্জাতিক স্তরেই হোক, আমাদের ব্যক্তিগত স্তরেই হোক বা পারিবারিক স্তরেই হোক, আমাদের একজন পরম আশ্রয় আছেন। তিনি হচ্ছেন রবীন্দ্রনাথ ঠাকুর। আমি আমার আলোচনার যে বিষয়টা ভেবেছি সেটা হচ্ছে রবীন্দ্রনাথের দৃষ্টিতে চীন এবং ভারতের সম্পর্ক, মানে ইন্ডিয়া চাইনিজ রিলেশন ইন ভিউ অফ রবীন্দ্রনাথ টেগর। আমাদের দেশ ভারতবর্ষের মতোই চীনও একটি প্রাচীন দেশ, ঐতিহ্যপূর্ণ সভ্য দেশ। আমাদের দেশের মতোই চীনে নাকি আর যাই হোক কবি ও কবিতার অভাব নেই। চীনের ম্যাজিক খুবই বিখ্যাত, সারা পৃথিবীব্যাপী তার একটা পরিচিতি আছে, একটা জনপ্রিয়তা আছে। এমনকি আমরা দেখি যে সুরূপা দেবী, অবনীন্দ্রনাথ ঠাকুরের ছোট মেয়ে, তার লেখার মধ্য দিয়ে যে রবীন্দ্রনাথ যখন এই তার জোড়াসাঁকো ঠাকুর বাড়ির হল ঘরে কিংবা বিচিত্রা হলে যখন চীনার ম্যাজিশিয়ানরা যখন ম্যাজিক দেখাতে আসতো, তখন কিন্তু তিনি তার নাতি নাতনিদের ডেকে সেই ম্যাজিক দেখাতেন এবং তিনি তাদের সাথে একটা উপভোগ করতেন। এবং চীনের প্রতি রবীন্দ্রনাথের একটা আলাদা উৎসাহ বলি, উৎকণ্ঠাই বলি ছিল। তার বড় প্রমাণ হচ্ছে যে রবীন্দ্রনাথ যখন মাত্র 20 বছর বয়স, তখন রবীন্দ্রনাথ একটি প্রবন্ধ লিখলেন ভারতী পত্রিকায় 1288 বঙ্গাব্দের জ্যৈষ্ঠ সংখ্যায়। প্রবন্ধটির শিরোনাম হচ্ছে চীনের মারণ ব্যবসা, চীনের মরণের ব্যবসা। এই যে তখন ইংরেজরা, ব্রিটিশরা, তারা চীনে ওইফেন ব্যবসা করছে, তাদের বাধ্য করছে ওইফেন খেতে এবং তার জন্য পয়সা নিচ্ছে এবং না রাজি হলে লাগামহীন হত্যা লীলা চালিয়েছে। তো সেই একটি জায়গায় মাত্র 20 বছরের রবীন্দ্রনাথ, পরাধীন ভারতবর্ষের একজন যুবক, তিনি কিন্তু তার লেখনীর মধ্য দিয়ে এই ব্রিটিশ সরকারের প্রতি, ইংরেজ সরকারের প্রতি তিনি কিন্তু তার 20 বছরের রবীন্দ্রনাথ তার মনের বিষ উগড়ে দেন তার কলমের মধ্য দিয়ে। আমি আমার শ্রোতা বন্ধুদের একটুখানি পড়িয়ে শোনাচ্ছি যে তিনি কি ভাষায় আক্রমণ করছেন। বলছেন, একটি সমগ্র জাতিকে অর্থের লোভে বলপূর্বক বিষ পান করানো হইল, এমনতর নিদারুণ ঠকিবৃত্তি কখনো শোনা যায় নাই। চীন কাঁদিয়া কহিল, আমি ওই ফেন খাইব না। ইংরেজ বণিক কহিল, সে কি হয়? চীনের হাত দুটি বাঁধিয়া তাহার মুখের মধ্যে কামান দিয়া ওই ফেন ঠাসিয়া দেওয়া হইল। দিয়া কহিল, যে ওই ফেন খাইলে তাহার দাম দাও। বোঝা যায় যে রবীন্দ্রনাথ 20 বছর বয়সে, এবং রবীন্দ্রনাথের এটাই প্রথম সেই অর্থে পলিটিক্যাল এসে, অর্থাৎ রাজনৈতিক একটা প্রবন্ধ। রবীন্দ্রনাথ পরবর্তী জীবনে অনেক প্রবন্ধ লিখেছেন, কিন্তু তার সূচনাটা হলো এরকম একটি সময় 20 বছর বয়সে, এবং সেটা চীনে যে ওইফেন ব্যবসার নামে ইংরেজরা যে অত্যাচার করছিল তার প্রতিবাদে। যদিও এই ক্ষেত্রে রবীন্দ্রনাথের তখন জার্মান পাদ্রি ডক্টর ক্রিস্টেলারের দ্য ইন্ডো ব্রিটিশ ওপিয়াম ট্রেড এই গ্রন্থটির দ্বারা ভীষণভাবে অনুপ্রাণিত হয়েছিলেন। এছাড়াও তিনি 1898 সালে চীনেম্যানের চিঠি বলে একটি প্রবন্ধ লেখেন, যেই প্রবন্ধে তিনি মূল বিষয়টাকে নিয়ে আসলেন যে চীনের সভ্যতা, চীনের সংস্কৃতি, চীনের সমাজ, চীনের সাহিত্য তা খুবই উন্নত, তা খুবই সারা বিশ্বের কাছে অনুসরণীয় দৃষ্টান্ত। এবং আমরা যদি বায়োগ্রাফি বইটির পাতা উল্টাই, তাহলে দেখবো যে সেখানে তিনি কমেন্ট করছেন, দ্য চাইনিজ আর এ গ্রেট পিপল, দে হ্যাভ ক্রিয়েটেড এ ওয়ার্ল্ড অফ বিউটি। এইভাবে তিনি চীনকে স্বাগত জানিয়েছেন। রবীন্দ্রনাথ যখন পেলেন, নোবেল পেলেন, সেই সময় কিন্তু সারা বিশ্বে রবীন্দ্রনাথের নাম যেমন ছড়িয়ে পড়লো, চীনেও কিন্তু শুরু করলো। 13 সালেই যখন পেলেন, সেই গোড়া, ঘরে বাইরে, চতুরঙ্গ, রবীন্দ্রনাথের কবিতা, রবীন্দ্রনাথের গল্প, রবীন্দ্রনাথ চিঠিপত্র পর্যন্ত চীনে কিন্তু একের পর এক অনুবাদিত হতে শুরু করলো। শুধু তাই নয়, যে কমিউনিস্ট আন্দোলনের প্রতিষ্ঠাতা এবং কমিউনিস্ট আন্দোলনের প্রচার এবং প্রসারের ক্ষেত্রে যার নাম শ্রদ্ধার সঙ্গে চীনেরা মাও সেতুং এর পাশাপাশি উচ্চারণ করে, সে হচ্ছে ছন্তু শিও। এই ছন্তু শিও সে কিন্তু গীতাঞ্জলির সেই সময় কমিউনিস্ট আদর্শ প্রসারের জন্য 4টি কবিতা তিনি চীনা ভাষায় অনুবাদ করেছিলেন। তার মধ্যে একটি উল্লেখযোগ্য হচ্ছে চিত্রজেতা ভয়শূন্য উচ্চজেতাশীল। রবীন্দ্রনাথ সারা বিশ্বে পরিভ্রমণ করেছেন, অন্তত 30টি দেশ তিনি পরিভ্রমণ করেছেন, তার মধ্যে চীনও অন্যতম। যদিও চীনে তিনি মাত্র 2 বার গিয়েছিলেন, একবার গিয়েছিলেন 58, আর একবার গিয়েছিলেন মাত্র 2 দিনের জন্য। 58 দিনের জন্য তিনি প্রথম চীনে পদার্পণ করলেন 1924 সালে 12 এপ্রিল। পেইং লেকচার অ্যাসোসিয়েশনের আমন্ত্রণে তিনি পা রাখলেন, এবং সেই সময় তিনি চীনের শহর যেমন সাংহাই শহরগুলোর যেটা আছে, সাংহাই, হাংচৌ, নানচিং, চিনান, বেইজিং, তাইওয়ান, হানমো ইত্যাদি বড় বড় শহরগুলো তিনি সেই সময় পরিক্রমা করেছিলেন, এবং সঙ্গী সেই সময় ইতিমোহন সেন, তিনি গেলেন, এবং সেই সময় সেখানকার তরুণ কবি এবং রবীন্দ্রনাথের দোভাষী তিনি হচ্ছেন সুশ্রীমো। তো সুশ্রীমো ছিলেন, তিনি যখন হাংচং শহরে নিয়ে গেলেন, তখন একটা অদ্ভুত ভাবে কবিকে সম্মান জানানোর জন্য তারা কবির যে টেগোর উপাধি সেটাকে বললেন থাইবার। এই থাই হচ্ছে চীনের যে 5টি পর্বতমালা তার একটি অন্যতম পর্বতমালা হচ্ছে থাই, পবিত্র পর্বতমালা তাদের কাছে। রবীন্দ্রনাথকে সম্মান জানানোর জন্য তারা একটা খোদাই করা ইসের মধ্যে থাইবার লিখে তাকে সেটা উপহার দিয়েছিল। এবং রবীন্দ্রনাথ চীনে আসছেন এই সংবাদটা যখন চীনে পৌঁছালো তখন সুশ্রীম তিনি একটি প্রবন্ধ লিখলেন যে সান রাইজিং ইন থাই, অর্থাৎ আমরা বাংলা করলে বলতে পারি যে থাই পর্বতের সূর্যোদয়। তো সেইখানে রবীন্দ্রনাথ তখন 64 বছর, কারণ 1924 সাল। তো পেইচিং শহরে কিন্তু রবীন্দ্রনাথের জন্মোৎসব পালিত হলো। পালন করলেন কারা? না, পালন করলেন হচ্ছে যে এই যে পেইচিং যে লেকচার অ্যাসোসিয়েশন, সেই লেকচার অ্যাসোসিয়েশনের যে সভাপতি যার নাম ছিল হচ্ছে লিয়াং চি ছাও, এই লিয়াং চি ছাও তিনি ব্যবস্থা করলেন এবং এই ব্যবস্থাপনা তিনি দায়িত্ব দিলেন ক্রিসেন্ট মুন সোসাইটিকে। তার একটা বর্ণাঢ্য অনুষ্ঠানের মধ্যে এই কবির জন্মোৎসব পালন করলেন এবং কবিকে তারা এবং সেই জন্ম উৎসবটা পালন হয়েছিল একটা ঐতিহাসিক পার্ক চীনের, সেটা হচ্ছে তিথানে। এবং সেইখানে কবিকে বলা হলো, চীনা ভাষায় কবির নাম দেওয়া হলো চু চেং তান। চু চেং তান, এই চু চেং তানেরও নামের একটা ভালো ব্যাখ্যা আছে, সেটা হচ্ছে যে চীনের প্রাচীন গ্রন্থতে ভারতকে বলা হয় তেয়ান চু, আর ভারতের প্রাচীন গ্রন্থগুলিতে চীনকে বলা হচ্ছে যে চেং তান। এই চু এবং তার মিলিত হয়ে নামকরণ করা হলো এবং সেই সময় রবীন্দ্রনাথের চিত্রাঙ্গদা চিত্রনার ক্ষেত্রে এই যে সুচিন্দ্র তিনি মদনের ভূমিকায় পাঠ করলেন এবং তিনি পাঠ করলেন চিত্রাঙ্গদা চরিত্রে। ইংরেজি ভাষায় হয়েছিল। ক্রিশ্চিয়ান মুন সোসাইটির সদস্যরাই এই কাব্যনাট্যে বা নাট্যকাব্যে যাই বলে সেই তারা অভিনয় করলো এবং রবীন্দ্রনাথ এই অভিনয় দেখে মুগ্ধ হলেন যে এই চীনা ক্রিশ্চিয়ান মুন সোসাইটির তারা যখন রবীন্দ্রনাথের কাছে নানা তার কেউ চরিত্রে হাওয়া এবং সেই দিনের সেই জন্মদিন পালন রবীন্দ্রনাথের কাছে এতটাই স্মরণীয় ছিল, তার মধুর স্মৃতি। যখন মৃত্যুর কয়েক মাস আগে অর্থাৎ 1941 সালের ফেব্রুয়ারি মাসে তিনি চীনের জন্ম
অপূর্বদা, অপূর্বদা তুমি শুনতে পাচ্ছ? प्रभात, आप प्लीज अपूर्वा से कांटेक्ट कीजिए।
हेलो चिरंजीत दा
नेक्स्ट स्पीकर पे आप दे सकते हैं।
ओके ठीक है। I'm very sorry to all the participants due to some technical problems, as all of you know that technical problems
Mohan.
associated.
I think he is online.
Oh, sir is online, so he will continue with his remaining lecture. So, Chiranjit da, could you please put Apurva da online?
হ্যাঁ তো জিজ্ঞেস করলে কোন
Yes, sir. Continue, sir.
Yes, sir.
তো সেখানে তো চীনের কথা যেটা বলা হচ্ছে যে ধরিনো চীনের নাম পুরনো চীনের বসবাস। তো আজকের এই করোনা নামক যে মারাত্মক ভয়ঙ্কর মহামারী যা সারা বিশ্বকে গ্রাস করতে চলেছে, তার নিন্দুকরা বলে যে তার জন্মস্থান নাকি সেই আতুর ঘর নাকি সেই চীনেরই উহান শহরে। স্বাভাবিক কারণে চীনের নাম ধরা, তার পরিবেশ নেওয়া ইত্যাদি গুলো খুব কঠিন হয়ে দাঁড়ায়। যাই হোক, সেটা আমি একটু রসিকতার জন্য এই কথাটা বললাম। পরবর্তী ক্ষেত্রে তিনি যখন চীনে গেলেন, সেটা একটা অদ্ভুত ব্যাপার। সেটা হচ্ছে 1929 সালের মার্চ মাসে। সেই সময় তিনি বিশ্ব ভ্রমণে বেরোলেন এবং তার কথা ছিল যে 1929 সালের 19শে মার্চ তিনি স্বদেশে ফিরবেন। কিন্তু এই সময় রবীন্দ্রনাথের একটা বিপর্যয় ঘটে। সেটা হচ্ছে যে কানাডায় তার পাসপোর্টটা হারিয়ে যায়। ফলে খুব আতান্তরে পড়লেন রবীন্দ্রনাথ। এবং তিনি যখন ওই ইমিগ্রেশন অফিসে গেলেন, অভিবাসন দপ্তরে, তখন একজন অফিসার রবীন্দ্রনাথকে জিজ্ঞাসা করলো, জানতে চাইলো রবীন্দ্রনাথের কাছে যে আর ইউ এ এডুকেটেড পার্সন। রবীন্দ্রনাথ প্রচন্ড ক্ষুব্ধ হয়েছিলেন এবং তিনি মর্মাহত হয়েছিলেন, কারণ তখন রবীন্দ্রনাথের নাম সারা বিশ্ব ছড়িয়ে গেছে। কানাডাতেও রবীন্দ্রনাথের রচনা অনুবাদিত হয়েছে এবং সরকারি স্তরে অনুবাদিত হয়েছে। তো যাই হোক, শেষ পর্যন্ত অনেক কাঠখড় পুড়িয়ে রবীন্দ্রনাথ শেষ পর্যন্ত আসলেন চীনে। চীনে এসে তিনি তার বন্ধু, তিনি হচ্ছেন ওই সুচিব্র, তার বাড়িতে এসে উঠলেন। এবং সেইখানে উঠার পরে তিনি কি করলেন না, সেইখানে তিনি তাদের আপ্যায়নে, তাদের আতিথেয়তায় তার যে মনের বিষণ্ণতা ছিল, মনের যে দুঃখ ছিল, যে ক্ষোভ ছিল, যে তাকে জিজ্ঞাসা করা হয়েছিল যে আপনি শিক্ষিত কিনা। শুধু তাই নয়, যে একটা পাসপোর্ট পেতে তাকে যে পরিমাণ হয়রানি হতে হয়েছিল নোবেল লরিয়েট রবীন্দ্রনাথকে, সেই বিষণ্ণতা, সেই দুঃখ, সেই যন্ত্রণা ইত্যাদি সবটাই দূর হয়ে গেল। এবং তিনি তখন একটি কবিতা লিখলেন, সেটাও স্ফুলিঙ্গের 37 নং সংখ্যক কবিতা। 4টি লাইনে তিনি একটা কবিতা ওই দম্পতিকে উপহার দিয়েছিলেন। সেটা হচ্ছে, পথে হলো দেরি, ঝরে গেল চেরি, দিন বৃথা গেল। অর্থাৎ চেরি ফুলের মতন ঝরে গেছে তার দুঃখ যন্ত্রণা, যদিও কিছু দিন নষ্ট হয়েছে, তবু তোমায় ক্ষমা হাসি বহি দেখা দিল আজিলিয়া, রঙিন ফুল আজিলিয়া তাকে আনন্দ দিয়েছে। অর্থাৎ এই যে দম্পতি, বিশেষ করে সুচিম্রর যে স্ত্রী, তার যে আপ্যায়ন, তা তাকে এতটাই আনন্দ দিয়েছে যে চেরি ফুলের মতন সমস্ত দুঃখ যন্ত্রণা দূর হয়ে যায়। এই প্রসঙ্গে আরেকটি কথা না বললে হয় না, সেটা হচ্ছে যে চীনের একটি অপেরা ধর্মী নাটক হচ্ছে পিকিং অপেরা, যেটা নাচ গান অভিনয়ে একদম জমজমাট একটা অপেরা। এবং রবীন্দ্রনাথ যখন ওই হাংচং শহরে গেলেন, সেই সময় কিন্তু ওই পিকিং অপেরার একটা খ্যাতিমান শিল্পী লানফাং, এই লানফাং তাকে একটা অনুষ্ঠান দেখায় যেটা লো দেবী নামে। রবীন্দ্রনাথ মুগ্ধ হয়ে গেলেন। এবং এই অপেরার একটা বৈশিষ্ট্য হচ্ছে যে এখানে ছোট ছোট রেশমি পাখা ব্যবহার করা হয়, এবং সেই পাখা অভিনেতারা বিভিন্ন ক্ষেত্রে প্রয়োগ করেন। মেয়েরা কখনো চুলের মধ্যে একটা ইসের মতন করলেন যেখানে একটা সৌন্দর্য তৈরি হয়, কখনো তাদের মুখ ঢাকার ক্ষেত্রে, কখনো হাওয়া খাওয়ার ক্ষেত্রে, কখনো সেটা দিয়ে একটা বিনাও করে ফেলা হয়। এইটা রবীন্দ্রনাথকে নতুনভাবে আকর্ষণ করলো। কিন্তু যেটা মজার ব্যাপার যে এই যে সংস্কৃতিটা, এই সংস্কৃতিটাকে রবীন্দ্রনাথ আরো কিভাবে উন্নত করা যায়, আরো এর মঞ্চসজ্জা কিভাবে করা যায়, তিনি বললেন যে সোনালী রূপালী রং ব্যবহার করো তোমরা যখন স্বর্গের সিন করছো। এবং ওই লানফাং, যার বিশ্ববিখ্যাত তখন খ্যাতি এই অপেরা নাটকের মধ্যে, তিনি অবাক হয়ে যান রবীন্দ্রনাথের এই বোধ দেখে। তো সেরকম একটি জায়গায় দাঁড়িয়ে রবীন্দ্রনাথ তখন ওই পাখার ওপরেই ওই লানফাংকে দুটো কবিতা লিখে আসলেন, এবং লানফাং নিজেও মুগ্ধ হলেন। এই হলো রবীন্দ্রনাথ। যখন 1937 সালে চীন জাপান যুদ্ধ তৈরি হলো, পরাধীন ভারতবাসীর উদ্দেশ্যে তিনি কিন্তু জাপানের বিরুদ্ধে বিষোদ্গার করলেন, এবং তিনি পরাধীন ভারতবাসীকে আহ্বান জানালেন যাতে চীনের পক্ষে নৈতিক সমর্থন করার জন্য এবং আর্থিক সাহায্য করার জন্য। এবং শান্তিনিকেতনে বসে রবীন্দ্রনাথ প্রতিটা মুহূর্তেই তিনি যুদ্ধের খবরাখবর রাখছেন। এমনকি প্রশান্তচন্দ্র মহানবীশকে চিঠি লিখছেন ইংরেজিতে। আমি সময়ের অভাবে সেই চিঠিগুলো পড়ছি না আর কি। তো সেইখানে তিনি বলছেন যে যদি এই যুদ্ধে চীনারা হেরেও যায়, তথাপি তাদের লজ্জিত হওয়ার কোনো কারণ নেই, কেননা তারা একটা রেসিস্ট শক্তি তৈরি করেছে। তারা অন্তত জাপানকে আক্রমণ প্রতিরোধ করবার জন্য একটা ক্ষমতা তারা করছে, এবং বলেছেন যে আগামী দিনে চীনেরই জয়লাভ হবে। এই বিশ্বাসটা তার ছিল। যেমন ভারতবর্ষে স্বাধীনতা একদিন ভারতবর্ষ অর্জন করবে, ইংরেজদের একদিন চলে যেতেই হবে মৃত্যুর আগে, রবীন্দ্রনাথ লিখছেন তার কবিতার মধ্য দিয়ে, ঠিক সেইভাবে তিনিও কিন্তু এই কথাটা জোর দিয়ে বললেন। এবং 1938 সালের 20 এবং 21 মার্চ দুদিন ব্যাপী কলকাতায় এই চীনার আর্থিক তহবিল গঠন করার জন্য তিনি যে আহ্বান করেছিলেন, সেটা একটা অনুষ্ঠান হয়। তখন চিকিৎসকের পরামর্শ নিয়ে এবং তাদের অগ্রাহ্য করে, বিধিনিষেধ অগ্রাহ্য করেই রবীন্দ্রনাথ অসুস্থ শরীরে কিন্তু যেদিন চণ্ডালিকা ওইখানে মঞ্চস্থ হয়েছিল সেখানে উপস্থিত হয়েছিলেন। এবং শুধু তাই নয়, তিনি সেখানে 500 টাকা দান করেছিলেন চীনের এই লড়াইয়ের একজন সাথী হিসাবে। অর্থাৎ সেই চীন জাপান যুদ্ধে তিনি শেষ পর্যন্ত চীনের পক্ষে থেকে চীনকে একটা নৈতিক সমর্থন করেছিলেন, এবং সেই অর্থ তিনি সেখানে দান করেছিলেন। রবীন্দ্রনাথ সারা জীবনে কর্মে ও কথায় আত্মীয়তা অর্জন করেছেন। রবীন্দ্রনাথ যখন নাকি চীন পরিভ্রমণ করছেন, একের পর এক জায়গায় তিনি সভা করছেন, সমিতি করছেন, বিদ্বজনদের সাথে যখন তিনি মিশছেন, তখন কিন্তু তিনি একটা কথা বলেছিলেন যে চীন এবং ভারতের যে সাংস্কৃতিক ঐক্য, যে রাজনৈতিক ঐক্য, সেই সাংস্কৃতিক ঐক্য, রাজনৈতিক ঐক্য এবং চীন এবং ভারতের মৈত্রী বন্ধনের ক্ষেত্রে তিনি আজীবন আমৃত্যু একটা প্রয়াস চালিয়ে যাবেন। এবং রবীন্দ্রনাথ কিন্তু সেই কথা রেখেছিলেন। রবীন্দ্রনাথ শান্তিনিকেতনে চীনা ভবন গড়ে তুললেন 1937 সালের 14 এপ্রিল। বিদেশের মাটিতে সারা বিশ্বে প্রথম চীনা ভাষা সাহিত্য সংস্কৃতির পীঠস্থান চীনা ভবন, যে চীনা ভবনে আজকে ভারতবর্ষের বিভিন্ন প্রান্ত থেকে, ভারতবর্ষের বাইরের অন্যান্য দেশ থেকে অসংখ্য গুণীজন বিদ্বজন চীনা ভবনে আসেন। তারা চীনা ভাষা নিয়ে, চীনা সংস্কৃতি নিয়ে, চীনার সাথে অন্যান্য দেশের সংস্কৃতি নিয়ে তারা কিন্তু শেষ পর্যন্ত গবেষণা করেন, পরীক্ষা নিরীক্ষা করেন, এবং এইখানে তাকে বিশেষভাবে সাহায্য করেছিল মাও সেতুংয়ের যে বাল্য বন্ধু ছিলেন অধ্যাপক থান উনসান। তিনি বেশিরভাগ সময় অতিবাহিত করেছিলেন শান্তিনিকেতনে শুধুমাত্র কবির স্বপ্নকে সার্থক রূপ দেওয়ার জন্য। এবং এই সময় নানা রকম পণ্ডিতেরা তারা এসেছিলেন এবং নানা জায়গায়, শুধু তাই নয়, আজকে আমরা যে জায়গাটা এসে শেষ করব, কারণ আরো দুজন বক্তা আছেন, সেটা হচ্ছে যে শুধুমাত্র চীনে এখনকার যে অবস্থা সেইটা একটু বলি। সেটা হচ্ছে যে চীনে 33 খণ্ডে রবীন্দ্র রচনাবলী প্রকাশিত হয়ে গেছে। চীনের যে আন্তর্জাতিক বেতার কেন্দ্র RCI, রেডিও অফ চায়না অফ ইন্টারন্যাশনাল, সেইখানে প্রতি বছর রবীন্দ্র জন্মদিনে রবীন্দ্রনাথের অনুষ্ঠান হয়। সোমেন্দ্রনাথ বন্দ্যোপাধ্যায় 10 বছর কাটিয়েছেন চীনে। 1912 সালের 5ই আগস্ট প্রতিদিনে তিনি ওই ছুটির যে করপত্র তাতে একটি প্রবন্ধ লিখেছিলেন। তার প্রবন্ধ থেকে আমরা জানতে পারছি যে এখন চীনের যে যুব সমাজ, তরুণ তারা তাদের ভ্যালেন্টাইন্স ডেতে রবীন্দ্রনাথের কবিতা, রবীন্দ্রনাথের গানে উদ্ধৃতি দেন। রবীন্দ্রনাথের গানের টোন, রিংটোন হয় ওই যুবক যুবতীদের মোবাইলে। কলের শ্রমিক, কৃষক, ওই কলেজের অধ্যাপক থেকে কেরানিকুল বড়বাবু, তারা প্রত্যেকেই রবীন্দ্র চর্চার মধ্যে কিন্তু আছেন। তারা রবীন্দ্রনাথের নিয়ে আলোচনা করছেন। শুধু তাই নয়, সাংহাই শহরে কিন্তু শেষ পর্যন্ত কিন্তু কি হলো না, একটা মিউজিয়ামও গড়ে উঠেছে। শেষ করব যে কথাটির মধ্য দিয়ে, আজকে যখন এই করোনা পরিস্থিতিতে আমরা সবাই সে আছি, গত 7ই মে 2020 ওই আন্তর্জাতিক বেতার কেন্দ্রে রবীন্দ্রনাথের মুক্তধারা নাটক অভিনীত হয়। অদ্ভুতভাবে সেই নাটকের শিরোনাম ছিল ওয়াটারফল অফ ফ্রিডম, এ স্পিরিচুয়াল ভ্যাকসিন ফ্রম টেক অফ, যেখানে আয়োজক সংস্থা ছিলেন চীনের প্রখ্যাত নাট্য সংস্থা সিংলেন নাট্যগোষ্ঠী এবং পিকিং বিশ্ববিদ্যালয়ের ইন্ট্রোডাকশন টু টেগর তারা, এবং তার যে অধ্যাপিকা ওয়াই লিভিং, তিনি অনুষ্ঠানের শুরুতে যে কথা বলেন সেটা কিন্তু আমাদের একটু স্মরণ রাখা দরকার। তিনি বলেছিলেন যে রবীন্দ্রনাথের দর্শন সেটা হচ্ছে পাখির নীড়ের মতন একটি দর্শন। আজকের এই মহামারীর সংকটের প্রতিষেধক হিসাবে রবীন্দ্রনাথের দর্শনই আদর্শ প্রতিষেধক হয়ে উঠতে পারে। এবং এখানে পরিচালক ছিলেন হাও ইয়ংচু। কনফারেন্স ভিডিওর মাধ্যমে 3টি বিশ্ববিদ্যালয়ের 10 জন রবীন্দ্র গবেষক এই মুক্তধারা নাটকটা করেন। এবং এই মুক্তধারা নাটকের মধ্য দিয়ে যে বার্তাটা তারা আমাদের কাছে পৌঁছে দিলেন সেটা হচ্ছে আয় সবে মিলেমিলি হাতে হাত রাখি। আজকের এই অতিমারী সংকটের মোকাবিলায় যেটা সারা বিশ্বের কাছে একটা উজ্জ্বল দৃষ্টান্ত। রবীন্দ্রনাথ শুধু মুক্তধারা নয়, রক্তকরবী, অচলায়তন, রথের রশ্মি, সব জায়গায় কিন্তু এই জোট বাঁধর কথা বলেছে। মানুষের সর্বশ্রেষ্ঠ রাষ্ট্রশক্তির বিরুদ্ধে মানুষের মুক্তির জয়গান গেয়েছেন এবং সেইখানে সমবেত প্রতিরোধ গড়ে তোলার কথা বলেছেন। এই নাটকটা আর একটা বিষয়, এই নাটকের শেষ হয়েছিল একটা স্লোগানের মধ্য দিয়ে, নো ওয়াটার নো ফিউচার, অর্থাৎ যে জল সংকটের জন্য আজকে সারা বিশ্ব নাভিশ্বাস উঠেছে, চীনও তার বাইরে নয়, এবং সেই ক্ষেত্রে রবীন্দ্রনাথই কিন্তু সেই পরম আশ্রয় হয়ে উঠেছেন। ফলে ভারত এবং চীনের সাংস্কৃতিক মৈত্রী বন্ধনে, রাজনৈতিক মৈত্রী বন্ধনে রবীন্দ্রনাথের অবদান অনস্বীকার্য। রবীন্দ্রনাথ আমাদের পরম আশ্রয়, এবং দুটো দেশের নাগরিকদের মধ্যে একটা মেলবন্ধনের ক্ষেত্রে রবীন্দ্রনাথের সাহিত্য, সংস্কৃতি, দর্শন আমাদের চলার পথের পাথর হয়ে থাকবে, এই বিশ্বাস নিয়েই শেষ করছি। ধন্যবাদ।
You are live. Prabhat,
You are live.
Thank you, sir, Apurba sir, for such enriching and insightful lecture, and particularly touching the cultural and spiritual aspect of Rabindranath Tagore's vision on India-China relations. Definitely, Tagore's vision of India-China was of a mutually beneficial interactive relationship between the two countries. He passionately advocated the reopening of part of synergy between the two countries that had become lost through the centuries. In fact, uh, Tagore is important because of his efforts. He was the first to initiate a more scientific study of China in India in his university, Visva Bharati. The establishment of the first Sino-Indian Cultural Society and, as sir mentioned, China Bhavan at Santi Niketan were the cornerstones for this cause. The civilizational link between the two countries advocated by Tagore also inspired the Panchil or the five principles of coexistence between the two countries. It was Tagore's vision of internal partnership between India and China that inspired the vision of India-China friendship in the 50s, in the 1950s, in the last century. Thank you once again, sir. Now, moving on, our second speaker is Professor Chokey N. Bhutia. Welcome, ma'am, to the webinar. Uh, let me introduce Professor Chokey. Professor Chokey N. Bhutia is an assistant professor in the Sikkim Government College, Butuk, Gangtok. She is also a guest lecturer in the Department of Political Science in the University of Sikkim. She is also a PhD research scholar in the Center for South Asian Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University. Her area of specialization has been India-Bhutan relations, India-China relations, China and South Asia, and SAARC. Her articles have been published in many reputed national and international journals, edited volumes, and online platforms. She has also presented papers in national and international seminars. She has also been associated with projects of government of Sikkim. Thank you. I welcome you, ma'am, and thank you. Ma'am, it's over to you. Chokey, you are live. Unmute yourself. Okay, you are live.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay. Okay. Firstly, good afternoon to everyone who's like currently on live with this particular webinar. I think like I would just like to thank firstly Raja Peary Mohan College and the Department of Political Science, Principal Dr. Sudeep, and the organizer Dr. Pravat Lama, and all the people who have been associated in organizing this particular webinar. So thank you so much for like considering me to be a part of this particular webinar. And I would also like to like address the speaker who was before me, sir. I mean, though I do not understand Bengali as such, but I think like, I mean, whatever he spoke was very enlightening in nature and must be like people who understood Bengali, it might have been very fruitful. But anyways, little bit like whatever I got to know from his like you can see this presentation, I just got to know that he was talking about like India-China relation dating to like the ancient period, which got revived through maybe like Rabindranath Tagore's basic book. So here I would also like to start from like the cultural relations of India-China relationship, like how their relationship like it dated to like 1st century, and how like cultural exchanges took place between the two countries, and more specifically it was like with the spread of Buddhism, you can say like exchanges started to take place between the two countries, and they had a lot of commonality features between them, like both of them had the credit of like world's oldest civilization. They have commonality of human resources. They have commonality of history of like rich culture and tradition. So in a like a short compilation, what we can figure out is like India and China in the ancient period, they shared a cordial relationship. That is the reason also why when political transition took place in these two particular countries, they supported each other. Therefore, like in the post like modern nation state formation, you can say when India became independent in 1947 and China became People's Republic in China in 1949, both the countries supported the political transition that took place in their particular. And not only that, like after the nation state formation, they also kind of like had a vision to like continue this relationship further, to take the the cordial ancient relation which had been existent between them to a further like another level. And out here specifically, it's like during that time, more than like China, it was like Nehru who was very enthusiastic in taking this relationship forward, because he had this desire to create like a pan-Asian nationalism, and that was the primary reason. And he felt that India and China becoming the two like huge countries in Asia, they had the capability to drive to like Asian nationalism. And secondly, also of course India, or you can see like India under Nehru, they were like quite aware of the fact that India really detest China. Like they are not in a position, they cannot like really confront China, or like make China at a like a on a like a rival level. So basically because of that, what this India wanted to do was like India just wanted to maintain friendly relationship with China. And during the initial like 1950s-60s period, like even China was very reciprocal towards India, and that's why during that time, like a lot of high-level exchanges took place, a lot of agreement on trade, or you can say like economic, or many other agreements were signed between the two countries. High-level visit took place, like during 1950s and 60s, Nehru visited like China two times, and like these kind of symbols like Hind Chin Bhai Bhai and Panchashil principle, they were all like a symbolic reflection of the cordial relation that was taking place between India and China. And during that time, trade was specifically seen as a very lucrative content between India and China during that time. But of course, considering China's like geostrategic interest, or you can say like the expansionist policy, the friendly relation of course had to be overtaken by like conflict, rivalry, and distrust between the two countries. And primarily during that time, I think it's not even think, it's like true that Tibet was the main reason for like creating distrust between India and China. Tibet, the chapter which happened with Tibet, like the incident which happened with Tibet, it kind of like it was a shocker for India, like how China could be so aggressive in its policy. But during the initial period also, in spite of like China's aggressive policy on Tibet, India chose to keep quiet under Nehru. In fact, like India during the initial period, they gave its like complete like approval to China's sovereignty over Tibet. The primary reason being like Nehru was on this concept of foreign policy, where like neighborhood first. You should have a very friendly relation with neighbor, and he very well also, of course, as I mentioned earlier, knew the consequences of like having like an aggressive relationship with China or detesting China. So during that time, like, though like in India during the time when the Tibet incident happened, many stakeholders, the opinions were divided between many stakeholders, but unfortunately you can say, or fortunately, India chose to keep numb and recognize China's sovereignty over Tibet. And especially it was like in 1954 when this Panchashil agreement was signed. After that, like it was a complete official recognition of Tibet to be a part of China. Everything was being done because Nehru was kind of in a pocket for long-term interest, which it's a very, actually, if you think like it's a very dicey concept. You can say he did a blunder mistake, or other factors are also involved. However, the thing out here is that what India was reciprocating towards China, okay, even if China committed an act of aggression in Tibet, China was doing some other skirmishes towards India, but still India kept quiet, still reciprocated with friendliness. So it was very bound from that period onwards only that China had to take undue advantage of India's friendliness, India's policy of appeasement. So soon after the Tibet chapter, China started to question the McMahon line, which was determined by the Britishers. China also started to make like unnecessary claims on Tibet. China also started to like reveal maps on their side which showed certain portions of like Indian territory to belong to them. And the culmination of all these actions was the famous 1962 attack on India, which took place between India, the war which took place between India and China. Though like after the 1962 war took place and ceasefire was like kind of declared, and then China had to leave the Indian occupied territory, but you can say like it was like a kind of a break in India-China relationship. Like 1962 was specifically that eye-opener for India, which served as a deadlock for India and China relationships. And ever since then, border issue has always been a major bone of contention between India and China, which has not been resolved till today also. So it's like after 1962, India also got this kind of vision that China's behavior is going to be very unpredictable and you really cannot trust China. And even after 1962, many kind of skirmishes, whether it's economic skirmishes or border skirmishes from China's side took towards India. Like you can, example was like in 1985, China constructed a military post in Tawang, Arunachal Pradesh. There also India and China had a military encounter with each other. However, in spite of all these skirmishes, in spite of all the aggressive policy, I mean, India somehow had this policy towards China that it always wants to move from hostility to constructive friendship, though suspicion and like rivalry was hung over in the air, but they always wanted to like, you know, kind of avoid confrontation or hostility with China. Therefore, like during like 1993, 1995 or like 2005, many agreements on line of actual control were signed. They also, the two countries also increased their cooperation in trade, in aspects of terrorism, in aspects of education. And during this period, China also recognized Sikkim to be an integral part of India. However, along the line of this cooperation, relationship between India and China has always been fueled with conflict and rivalry. And apparently they are like geopolitical rivals in the region. And India's like initiative of peacemaking or constructive friendship with China could not materialize much because due to China's like aggressive expansionist ambitions, its geostrategic ambitions, which have time and again been exemplified through China's like various actions on India, whether we can talk about the Doklam incident of 2017 or like China's encirclement of India in South Asia or the recent Galwan attack of 2020. So it is like their relationship is like kind of a roller coaster where like India is more, I feel, I mean, that's my opinion, I feel like India is more at the receiving end of Chinese aggressive policies, Chinese like actions, which is like proving to be like strategically very dangerous for India. Like out here, I just would like to talk a little bit about like South Asia's India getting encircled in its own region of South Asia. Like as in South Asia, it is very apparent, like not only just now, since a very long period of time in South Asia, China shared a very cordial relationship with Pakistan. They have always been an all-weather friend. But in the recent years, in the recent decades, what has been happening is that not just Pakistan, with the exception of Bhutan, all the other countries, whether it is Nepal, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, all these countries are tilting towards more China. They are kind of like finding China a more lucrative partner than India because like China is investing heavily in these countries. China is giving them economic, constructing the infrastructure in these particular countries. So therefore all these countries in a way they have like kind of sidelined India, you can see, because now they want to move more towards China. So through all these incidents, what is technically happening is that India is getting cornered in its own region. Firstly, the failure of SAARC is already there. That is one of the major, like you can see, a hindrance for India, so to say. And now again, all the countries siding towards China and not like, you know, giving regional importance to India in South Asia is another major concern for India's like strategic concern. And out here, like China, when it's like encircling India in South Asia, it's serving a dual purpose. First purpose is that it is like fulfilling its ambition of honoring India in South Asia, and secondly, it has its own set of interests involved in South Asia. If you give a small example, like for instance, Nepal, China is very much involved in Nepal because of the Tibet issue, and secondly, China knows the importance of the Himalayan region to be a geopolitical barrier, the importance, the value of Himalayas as a geopolitical barrier. Similarly, if you look in the case of Bangladesh proximity to Myanmar, that is the specific reason. Bangladesh have huge natural gas reserves. That is the interest of China. And of course, Pakistan is an all-weather friend. And of course, through Pakistan, China gets a gateway to the Middle East countries. It gets a hold over India. It can utilize the advantage of India-Pakistan conflict. So because of all these factors, in a way or the other, China is it has made its prominence in South Asia, and it has been able to to corner India in South Asia. And I think like to revamp its position, India in South Asia, it has to do a huge amount of investment like China has been doing in case of Nepal, in case of like Sri Lanka. And only then I think those countries will now again get back to the old traditional ties with India. Otherwise, like I personally, I mean, going through all the research and all, I don't see any reason for these small nations to come to India at this particular end. And as far as like economic aid is also concerned, the reality is also that like I don't think India can, afford to give the amount of economic aid that China has been giving to these particular countries. And another advantage I think like China has in South Asia is that China's bilateral relationship with the South Asian countries is not blemished by like socio-economic cultural ties, like in the case of India. I think that serves as the greatest advantage for China to gain its foothold in South Asia. So because of all these things, like India is like totally cornered, which is a source of major concern for India currently in the region. Now India's effort is towards gaining its prominence back. And I think currently, apart from Bhutan, I think India has technically lost control of all the countries in South Asia. Bhutan is the only country which is still sticking to the traditional bond it holds with India. So the issue of encirclement in South Asia has further complicated the relationship between India and China. And further adding to this, I think the Belt and Road Initiative will further undermine India's, diminishing position in South Asia, and which would impact India's security to a great extent, especially through the CPAC factor, that is China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. So out here, I think like this is a very disadvantageous point for India. So, and apart from this, like talking about the Doklam incidents for the matter, I'm sure everyone is well aware of what happened in a Doklam. It was like China was just trying to change the status quo of the trade junction between India, Bhutan and China, which brought India into a direct confrontation with China, which was actually not a issue of India and China. It was an issue of China and Bhutan, but due to security issues, India had to get into direct confrontation with China in this particular issue. And the major reason for India was like Doklam is like near to Siliguri, which is known as chicken neck corridor of India. So if China would have been successful in building a road over there, China would come straight near Siliguri neck corridor, which would give a direct access to the northeastern region of India. So because of all these factors, India had to get involved. But fortunately, like the Doklam standoff, as it is known, like it was like kind of solved diplomatically, and both the sides disengaged on consensus. And the irony of the thing is that when the two countries, they decided to disengage from the Doklam standoff, China sent sent a message to India during that time that it wants to revamp and rework on its relationship on the basis of Panchashil principle of peaceful coexistence with India. And India was very open to this particular principle, but I think that existed just in words, and it soon got marred by the recent, you can say, the Galwan attack of 2020, which clearly showed that China is a country, I think, which you cannot trust in terms of its words and its policies, because after the Doklam standoff, they had said that they are going to work on the principle of peaceful coexistence, but that did not happen. And as we all know, on May 2020, we had the Galwan clashes. Prior to that, there was skirmishes in the Nakula Pass and in the Ladakh region, and then eventually it led to the Galwan attack, where of course 20 of our soldiers got martyred along with one Indian colonel. And it's like a hidden thing how many of China's soldiers got martyred. But the important primary reason during the Galwan attack also, what was the primary reason? That too in a environment, in a scenario when coronavirus pandemic had hit the country, economy was running down, entire world was grasped up with this particular COVID issue. Why would China even intrude on India and would commit such kind of aggressive acts on India? The primary reason, of course, as it is known, was it wanted to offset India's road infrastructure in Ladakh, which is known as the DBO road project, or like the Darbuk Shok road project, which India is constructing in the Ladakh region, because like China sees this project of India like as a mechanism to offset its China-Pakistan economic corridor. So basically through this attack, China wanted to like stall, or like you can say disturb like India's DBO project in Ladakh. So out here, like just going by a brief analysis, so to say, like I mean, whatever has happened since 1962, whether it is 1962 or Doklam of 2017, or Galwan of 2020, or the China's ongoing encirclement policy, I mean, the thing to take into consideration is like India is always to ponder upon this particular question, like what next? Like Galwan just happened, so it's like there's no full stop to this particular incident. It's like now what next? India has to wait, like what next is going to happen, or what any other border skirmish or like economic skirmish. It has become a very common factor on the side of China, okay, to just intrude on India's territory, to affect its sovereignty, to affect its territorial integrity. And you can see the saddest part is that India even cannot counter China as rigidly as it can counter other countries like Pakistan, for instance. Like we had the Uri surgical strike. I don't think India can take that kind of action. It just cannot afford to counter China like it does other countries. Like in its exertion of like foreign policy acumen, it does not follow principle of rule of law. It does not follow the principle of transparency in consonance with the other party involved. And India has like constantly been the victim of this ply of Chinese. So like China basically is like very bothered towards India, firstly because I think primarily it is because of the border issues, and it is also because of India's growing power in Asia and India's like a growing relationship with the ASEAN countries, India's of course relationship with Tibet and the Dalai Lama. And of course, China also sees India as a strong competitor in Asia. Therefore, like China is like in a constant effort to diminish India's position in Asia generally, and I think in South Asia particularly, and to a like 90%, I think, of a format, it has been successful in doing this. So somehow or the other, like China is always going to be unpredictable in its behavior and its attitude, and India has to deal with it. And when I say deal with it, I don't think direct confrontation with India, direct confrontation with China is not a viable option. And I think like complete ban on China's trade and economy, that is not at all viable, I think, because that is going to be more destructive for India than for it's going to do good to India. Therefore, I think what India really needs is that it needs bigger plans. We should be more diplomatic in nature to counter the Chinese threat, which is unlikely to go away in future. I think proactive actions are needed. I think India, along with its domestic development at home, it can put more focus on its border and neighborhood. Like in recent Galwan attack example, there was this case that as soon as the attack took place, India steadily increased its labor force in the DBO road project. It instantly demanded laborers from Jharkhand. Okay, they increased to like 40,000 the laborers so that they can speed up the process of the road infrastructure, which is the primary reason for China to attack on the Galwan Valley. So I think actions of this sort can do an image construction for India, and it can show that India has an attitude of firmness, an attitude of intolerance to its territorial integrity and sovereignty. And I think whatever I could just analyze from the relationship that, I just found out that now in future, whether it's the policymakers, the academicians, the researchers, any stakeholders, whoever are involved, I think in making future strategy for China, I think India should keep in mind that China's geo-balancing strategy is proving to be successful in China's favor as it had planned to be. I think that is the most important factor, according to me, which India should keep in mind when the stakeholders are coming out with any policies or like any kind of programs or any kind of counter, you can say, laws and regulations in regard to China. The geo-balancing factor has to be taken into consideration diplomatically. Thank you. Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Professor Chokey, for such an enriching and extensive lecture. You have covered a lot. And to start with, or to mention some of your points, it's very interesting. Like you have mentioned about geostrategic interests of China led to the conflict between the two countries in 1962, and it was an eye opener for India. And similarly, you have mentioned that India is on a receiving end, and India is getting encircled and cornered in South Asia by China through its better relationship with the nations of South Asia.
South Asia.
And this has further complicated the issues between India and China. So I should say your lecture was very thought-provoking lecture, and thank you once again
Thank
for
you.
such a nice and extensive lecture. Now we move on to our third speaker, the last speaker, Dr. Bhim Subba. He is an assistant professor in the Department of Political Science, University of Hyderabad, and a visiting research associate at Institute of Chinese Studies, Delhi. In 2019, he was affiliated with the Department of Political Science, Sikkim University. He holds a PhD from Department of East Asian Studies with specialization in China, University of Delhi, and is an MA in Political Science from Center for Political Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University. Dr. Subba is a recipient of the Institute of Chinese Studies, Howard Yenching Institute, China-India Doctoral Studies Fellowship at Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, Harvard University, 2015 to 2017. A Ford Student Fellow conferred by the India-China Institute, the New York School, New York, and the Confucius Institute Scholarship awardee in 2013-14 for Mandarin language training. His research interests are comparative politics, China studies, and international relations. His articles have appeared in peer-reviewed journals, edited volumes, review blogs, and other online analysis and commentaries. Dr. Subba has traveled and lived in USA, China, Taiwan, and Vietnam for research studies and participated in many national and international seminars. Thank you, Dr. Bhim, and I welcome you in this webinar. Sir, it's over to you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, yeah. Good afternoon, everyone, and I'm sorry I joined late, and because of some technical glitches, I've been engaged in teaching in the morning, and now speaking on India-China relations before and after Galwan. Firstly, at the outset, I would like to thank our principal, sir, Dr. Chakrabarti, and Dr. Pravat Lama, convener of this national webinar on a very important topic of India-China relations. As of now, for the last 3.5 months, you have been studying or participating or in fact hearing about a lot of commentaries, whether it's in national television, newspapers, commentaries everywhere with regard to India-China relations. But today, after a very splendid presentation by Dr. Apurba Kumar Dey and Professor Chokey, actually they have made my job much easier, that I don't have to dwell much on the history and cultural aspect, but I'll be looking into the contemporary issue about India-China post Galwan and try to analyze what are things, what things have been really developed, and try to ponder and later on discuss more about how India-China relations have shaped since then. So to begin with, so can you see my slides?
Yes, we can.
I just was wondering, how can I remote control from there?
The same process like PPT.
Yeah, but
you need to go down. Like once you
Yeah. You see, in the same way, I opened the share tray and
No. Hello,
yes,
Dr. Beam. Yeah.
yes,
If you can just look into the panel at the lower end where the share tray is there,
yeah.
on the extreme right hand side, you find a
Request
call
control.
icon that's like a receiver, and after that there is a request control. Can
Yeah.
you see that?
Yeah.
Please press request control,
Yeah.
and
I just-
I would request the admin who has shared it to give him the access.
Oh, okay, yeah, I just did that.
Please give him the access. Can you change the slides, sir?
No.
Hold a minute.
You have to share the file, I think so.
Yeah, I've shared with the.
Hold a minute, sir.
Yeah.
Can you see the slides?
Yeah, I can see the first one.
Yeah, so please press control, request control again.
Yeah, I just did.
I think you can do it now. Please check.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I would again make it full screen.
Yeah, please.
Just
Thank
press
you.
once and see if it is changing. Hello.
Yeah, I'm trying it, but right now it again got
Request
so.
control again and press once. Request control, please.
No, I think somebody from the other end can help me out with as I read it through, I think.
Baju koyo?
Yeah, I'm still waiting on.
I would ask you to again request control once.
Yeah.
Now you have been shared. Please press once. Press once only, please.
Yeah, I just pressed once.
See, you just click it.
Yeah, I just clicked it.
Yeah, and the slides would be changing.
So I can click any keypad, right?
Yeah, you just try once. Yeah.
Enter. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, to begin with, I'm sorry for these glitches, actually. It's from my end, I guess so. So, as the other two speakers have already mentioned about how India-China interactions are really developed since ancient time onwards and bringing the rich historical and as well as cultural and civilizational aspect, especially by Dr. Day, and as well as like contemporary 19th century, 21st century account post PRC formation by Chokila. So now to begin with, like India-China relations, like I've been observing quite a while for now, and to really begin with, yeah. So just say India-China relations today, when we look at it, it has multi-layered dimensions, especially as already Dr. Dey again mentioned about historical, socio-cultural, economics, politics. And today when we talk about political aspects, we would delve into IR, international politics, as well as geostrategy and other things and all. So we cannot look at India-China relations only from a prism of a military perspective or from an economic perspective. So I would like to share some few slides at the outset, and we can go about how we can really think about India-China interactions as of today. How does it stand? So I'll be sharing some. This is authored by Roshan Kishore. He was my friend at JNU, and today he works at Hindustan Times. So he wrote a paper recently in this article in Hindustan Times in 22nd June, just like a week after Galwan incident. So when we assess India's economy vis-a-vis China, vis-a-vis America, so how do we see today? Like we see the per capita income of China, India, and the United States. Although China has been developing at a very fast rate for the last 30 years, but at the same time, it is just only as so-called upper middle income country. But at the same time, you see when you see the per capita of the United States, you see like more than 50,000 US dollars. But at the level of India and how we see it's just 2,100 US dollars. But again, looking that into one category and looking into other aspect like bilateral trade between India and China, you see 2018 and 19, almost like 90 billion US dollars were traded. Bilateral trade was happening. But at the same time, we see India's increasing dependence on imports, or we are depleting our resources dollars by importing more, which is like the deficit is almost bilateral deficit for India that India owes to China is more than like 50 billion US dollars in 2018 and 19. Thanks to COVID and Galwan, this year I think the numbers would be very, very, very less. So at the same time, we look at this category, but moving forward from here. So again, when we compare these three countries, again, dwelling in from Roshan Kishore's piece, because he had written a very important piece, we see what is the share of these three countries in the world GDP. Now, we can see how the US is functioning, how India is about, and what China is today. Now, if we look at India's growth, GDP as per this data, it really shows that we are not, doing well. But whereas China has really taken off since the 1980s. And when we look at China's political system, we see that China, a very closed, autarkic country until 1980. But post 1980, when it started economic reforms and some political reforms, its economy really took shape, and the take-off stage of China really, caught momentum to really develop fast. And now at the same time, we Indians, like just until 1970 and 80, if you look at the Gini coefficient between these two countries, actually India was in a much better situation still. And if you see some of these per capita incomes, it was quite okay until 1980s and 90s. So dwelling on that, how do we move forward? Now, politics, as Shokila had already talked about, the Panchsheel Agreement, the framework of peace, the principles of peace were there, legacy of 62, Sikkim in 1967, there were clashes. Again, like moving fast forward post 1980s, but in the early 200s, you see the special representative mechanisms formed under Vajpayee government, and before the foundation of the Nathula trade route in 2006, you see special representative mechanisms being established to maintain peace and tranquility in the border areas. And in 2019, 22nd round of special representatives round of talks has happened. But despite that, we have border clashes today. So even in that special representative mechanisms, you have confidence building measures, mechanisms, and as well as people-to-people contact. But first and foremost, it was for maintaining peace and tranquility in the border areas. But has it really happened though? So not at all. Despite that, you see China's rising economic clout has helped to maintain or rise its political image and international profile, which also has catapulted its rise and popularity and strength in military research, spending, and other expenditures. Now, today, every 2 or 3 years, we as a China scholars, we tend to read Chinese defense expenditures, and although they say that they have only spent like 250 billion US dollars or so, but at the long run, if you really calculate, the spending would be very, very high. But despite that, now that also has led to increasing transgressions now. Now, Depsang, Doklam, Nakula in North Sikkim in May 11th happened, and now increasing South China Sea. Now, South China Sea has become one of the important flashpoints for China. And also Hong Kong now. Now, Hong Kong's national security law, which has just been passed recently, not a month ago, that has really also shaped India's perception about China. What is China gonna be tomorrow? So, as Chokey has already also alluded to this BRI and CPEC, now China-Pakistan Economic Corridor has become a big concern for India. India's reaction to whether its interaction with China, with interaction to Pakistan, has always been how to message China, how to do the messaging towards China, that Chinese shouldn't invest in disputed areas and all, which China hasn't given any concern with regard to India. And so it has become one of the important areas of important areas, or very conflict, areas of conflict that really China or Pakistan or tomorrow India going to face in this China Economic Corridor. And you see the BCI Economic Forum. I remember taking part in one of these forums in Calcutta in 2012-13. I really see, although that had the potential, but today we don't see that. As if you see in the BRI initiative, one of the corridor was supposed to come from China to Myanmar, India, and Bangladesh, but that has never happened today. Now, also at the outset, we see geostrategic competition versus geostrategic cooperation now. Now, what is really leading to India-China interactions now? Whether can we cooperate among these two countries? Whether there can be a cooperation between these two countries, or it is always competition, as Ms. Chokey has said already there. So now, post-Galwan, what we see now? Now, post-Galwan, you see a lot of reactions now. The June 15 incident, although like 20 soldiers were martyred, but we Indians are still like asking China, like, how many of your forces have been killed, so murdered, or so to say being martyred and all, which China hasn't given any data. And in the recent interview to ICS, Institute of Chinese Studies, the ambassador's webinar, he mentioned that we are not going to disclose it. If we disclose it, that's not the point of how India-China interactions should happen. Now, diluting Chinese investments in PSUs and all post-Galwan, that has really taken a shape. Now, especially with regard to banning of Chinese apps. Now, I used to use a lot of Chinese apps with conversing, in writing to my friends and all. Today, I cannot do that, and that is very, very, unfortunate that we are facing such a problem. And even one of the most reactive incident or the policy step that the government of India really did post-Galwan was with regard to the new economy, sorry, not economy, the education policy 2020 and dropping of Mandarin language training program and replacing that by Korean language. Now that really shows what we are up to. Like, we have been trying to be very, very reactive. And I suppose, like, although the Galwan, such Galwans can happen anytime, but at the same time, that doesn't mean that we stop learning or engaging China. So I see India's reaction towards China, or India's interaction towards China, has been very problem-centric. It's problem-centric because one problem happens, they're going to solve that, and they're going to move to others. But it has not been as holistic as it should be. And I hope there are, like, the questions can be raised on many issues, though. But there are policy as well as institutional, structural, challenges to do. So now, post-Galwan, what we see, this the left-hand side picture, which is actually in Bangalore, in one of the hotels where Chinese were not allowed, it was written, that was post-Galwan incident. And the one that this is in Guangdong province in China, where it's written the Chinese people are not allowed, but Hindu-Ren in literal translation becomes Hindu. So, but Hindu doesn't mean that it's only Hindus were not allowed. It's Indians were not allowed. So we see, competitive perceptions post-Galwan clash in both the countries. And that is actually being fed by rising nationalism in both these countries. So as we are in India, for Indians, it becomes even tougher because our electoral system is based on this nationalism. Thanks in China, they don't have elections. So it is only when the party needs such kind of reactions, it really leads to that proportions and all. But this shows that, post-Galwan clash, people to people's perception has really changed. If our fathers or our fathers' generation were shaped by 1962 conflict, today, post-Galwan, June 15 incident has really changed Indians' mindset in India also, maybe in China as well. But my interaction to a lot of Chinese post-Galwan, before these softwares or apps were being banned, they weren't bothered about it. They just said that it is the party which is concerned, that you have to deal with the party, the state. The scholars and all were as busy. They were not just, we are friends, we have to work on our own issues and all. But government to government relations has not been such a peaceful and benign. So how do you go about it? Now this is post Galwan, what we see the reaction here in India. This is the shop where on the way to my university I go, and I just took that when I came back. That was day before yesterday, and you can really see initially this was China Bazaar. But today it has, post-Galwan, it has become A to Z Bazaar. And I'm not sure if this is the same case in other parts of the city or in other parts of the country. But this definitely has changed people's perception. But at the same time, we can see that, suppose if China Bazaar was selling everything, so A to Z Bazaar means that even today, despite, in spite of the name, change in its name or, the tagline, they sell the same products. So how do we see about it? So to be brief, or to come to my conclusion, and later on in the discussion we can talk about it. India and China, despite we have differences and all, but we cannot change ourselves because they are our neighbors. We have to deal with it. So how do we deal with China, rising China, or a very powerful China? So that's what I say, neighbors cannot be avoided. And secondly, firstly, we should really continue interaction, and interaction has to be continued. It should be constant interactions. It should be engaging interactions. But how do we do that? So build our capabilities now. No, capabilities can be political structures, political institutions, multilateral institutions. Today, with Trump's America and Xi Jinping's China, Trump leaving WHO and doing away with climate, treaties and all. Actually, that has really, delegitimized a lot of institutions and frameworks and all. So, but for India or for China, we need to build our capabilities to really engage China. So how do we do it? So firstly, multilateral institution. And we know that if India doesn't or is not capable to deal China alone, in that regard, we have to come forward with other willing nations to build our capabilities to really, not to contain China, but to engage China. So engaging China should be beyond regime paradigm framework. Now we tend to see in a lot of like my interactions with scholars and academicians or even policymakers and all, we tend to see China as a nutshell, as one unity that okay, China is a communist country, so we cannot deal with it. It's very hard, a great firewall and all. But when you really engage China or study China through its, understand China with the Chinese eyes, you tend to really, with the Chinese, training and all, you tend to see how domestic, issues are being framed in China, policies are being framed in China, how foreign policies are being framed, being written in China or worked in China now. So we cannot just say, okay, China is a communist country. Although even in China, they also see that, okay, India is a democracy, but when you see democratic country, anything bad about democracy, they take the example of India because India is a chaotic democracy and all. So if you really look into school textbooks and all, the amount of negative school textbooks, I'm saying, not in the higher institute, books and all of higher institutions and all, but especially textbooks. When you look at, the sections on India, actually it's quite bleak. So how can we change that mindset of China? So that's what actually for us, it should be more, holistic engagement of China beyond regime. Okay, we cannot say that it's a communist country and just live around. And that's what we cannot just, depend or rely on the Western conception on China. And lastly, why I brought this point is Air China or China Airlines is not Air India or Indian Airlines, because today still lot of our folks in our country don't know Air China and China Airlines, which is Republic of China and which is People's Republic of China. So Air India and Indian Airlines were both Indian airlines, right? Later on, Indian Airlines was catering to a domestic, within the domestic sector, but Air India to foreign sector, but abroad and all. But whereas Air China is Chinese airline, which is from People's Republic or the communist China. China Airlines is that of Taiwan. So, but still, unless we really engage China, we won't be knowing about it, how to go about engaging China. So I think I will stop here. So it would be more of continued interactions, building our own capabilities, engaging China beyond regime paradigm, and Air China or China line. So, thank you. Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Yeah, that's the end of my presentation. So, yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
Thank you.
well done, Bhim, sir. Bhim Daju.
Thank you, Professor Bhim. Thank you for your in-depth analyzed lecture. And some of the points, I would like to mention 2 points that you have mentioned out here, was very nice. One is India's India has always been China, and second is India should engage with China from multi-layered level or see in a very holistic manner. So thank you once again, and those who have any questions, they can put their questions in the chat box, both in Microsoft Teams team and the YouTube link chat box. And if you have any questions, then please let us know. We shall put your questions to the speakers. Uh, I have I have one question. The participant hasn't mentioned the name of the speaker, like to whom this question is addressed. But since Professor Chokey Namgyal Bhutia, she spoke on South Asia and China's engagement with South Asia, I'll put this question to her. The question is that is there any relevance of SARC in this juncture when almost all South Asian nations are inclined towards China?
I mean, I cannot say yes, I cannot say no also because, the relevance of SARC currently, I mean, being a South Asian student, we also do a lot of research on it. We really cannot come to the conclusion, we cannot say yes, there is relevance. It's like, it sometimes, it takes a, upscale, sometimes it takes a downscale. Like, for example, during the COVID pandemic time, okay, like SARC suddenly took a upsurge during that period because all the countries, they got an opportunity to come together, establish a SARC fund, to help each other during the crisis. And after that, again, it went down. So it's like, it depends upon the bilateral issues of the countries actually. Like, for example, when India and Pakistan were having this terror issues when, Pakistan committed terror acts on India in the Kashmir border in 2016. During that time, SARC just lost its relevance. So I think on a major, I can just say that, the relevance of SARC, I think it depends upon bilateral relationship, the relevance. And when I say bilateral relation, it mostly caters to India and Pakistan's bilateral relationship. And of course, now we have the involvement of China, which is of course not letting the SARC go to its position as it was established in 1985. So as far as I think relevance is concerned, I cannot say no also, and I cannot say yes also, because you do not know what keeps happening in the arena of international affairs or in the arena of like foreign policies. It's a very dynamic affair. Tomorrow something else might happen. India might take a step, and again something, there might be an upsurge in the forum itself. But yeah, of course, however, catering to the question, I think currently SARC is not in a good position. Okay, there are various factors involved as to why SARC is not in a good position. It is not in a good position. But I think relevance factor, you cannot just directly say like yes or no. I mean, it's a very subjective debate. I think it's just not for this. In our field of social science or international affairs, we cannot say yes, no. That there's no yes or there's no no. Everything's not like black and white. I mean, yeah.
Thank you, Professor Chokey. I hope the participant who had asked this question got a reply as per his expectation. So another question is there. Again, the speaker has not been mentioned out here, like to whom it is been addressed. So I would like to put this question to Professor Bhim. The question by the participant that has been asked is, in your viewpoint, can you say why India cannot attempt surgical strike against China?
It's not possible.
Yeah. So, Jesse, as an academician or a scholar of social sciences, so this would be, actually, just to be blunt, yeah. We as academicians, we can't say that. We can really tell the government, if tomorrow, if I have to say to the government, okay, so India-China border is such a long border, right? So in some areas, Chinese have strengths, like suppose in Doklam, they had the upper hands, and in Ladakh or Galwan, they had the upper hand. But similarly, we cannot go to Galwan and just keep on fighting there. So just say, now that depends on what kind of, as to a military person, he might give a different answer. But this India-China, reactions cannot be based on surgical strikes and, and others. Because if you see today's China is very powerful China. Anything gets reported to the party and all would be very, very risky for the regime itself. Okay, if you become rich, your threshold of risking lives also becomes very, very high, very high. So sorry, very low. So if somebody dies in China, so if you see Galwan incident, what happened was that until today, although there are some unofficial reports that there are 35 to 40 deaths that has happened in China, but still China won't acknowledge it. Even the ambassador didn't acknowledge it. So because that puts a regime on the risk. So why will China do that? And to just say that, okay, can China do that? I think it is prudent for India also not to do that. Thank you.
There is another question. This question also I'm going to put forward to Professor Bhim, since he talked about the recent Galwan crisis and post Galwan crisis. So the question is: recently Galwan standoff is not just a second. Oh, the Galwan standoff is not an isolated case. That's what the participant thinks, and it is interrelated to many dimensions. So he wants some comments from you.
Okay.
I hope you got through the question, right?
Yeah. So when you say that there are many, of course there are multi dimensions, because unlike our engagement in China, as I said at the outset in my presentations also, that it is multi-level, and we cannot see it just in one aspect. Okay, China, that Indians wanted to build some infrastructure and they went, but it's always been China. Now, when we look at it, now I won't look from the Indian perspective, but I would look from a Chinese perspective into it. Now, why did China do that now? China was raging in COVID crisis, and Hong Kong issue was not happening there. And at the same time, when you see India was also, trying to play with Taiwan issue a lot, okay? Because they think that the Chinese think that Taiwan is its own province. It's one of the naughty provinces. Okay, so we said, okay, the Chinese were saying that, okay, we Indians are playing with their core interests and all. So it's not just saying that, okay, they have to teach India a lesson. So although there are some writings in China, there are different schools of writings in China saying that there are very hawkish scholars and practitioners who are protesting against, who are saying that it is trying to teach India a lesson. But at the same time, you see what were the domestic concerns that China was happening in China. Today, you see Chinese are having, are undergoing through a very very bad flood situation. So sometimes, the domestic, situation can lead to its behavior outside. And whereas also in India also, our domestic electioneerings or campaign methods, sometimes we use Pakistan as a bait. So that's what it has multi-dimensional. So I would say more of it's domestic rather than international relations. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Bhim. There is another question. This is also addressed to you, Oli. As you have mentioned in the lecture that India needs to engage with China at multi-level dimension, multi-level layered level. So that is what you have suggested. Whereas the participant says that many experts in India have suggested to confine China or contain China. So why not confine or contain China rather than engage with China from a multi-layered front?
So I think Professor Dey might, bear me 3 years and also can help me out to build it out. But just say, India-China interactions is not just about containing China. We cannot contain China. US containment policy of vis-a-vis Soviet Union, actually the distance mattered a lot. But as to the neighbor, it becomes so difficult to contain a neighbor. So it's not affordable. And whereas like others in real politics, when you have to engage with your neighbors, where containing is that the pitfalls also happens to you also. And when you say containing China, at what level can you contain? Do you have the capabilities, firstly? Do you have the economic resources? Do you have the military resources, political resources, institutional resources? You should also carry other countries along with you. You cannot just contain China singly. So at what level can we invest, in this kind of frameworks? And as we see also that Professor, Day had actually mentioned about cultural relations between India and China. We see Buddhism went from India to China. So, the flows is always there, despite they have very strict internet, policies and all. But there has always been interactions. Like containing China won't help. It actually, in today's, situation, it's not a zero-sum game. So it should be a positive sum game where everybody has to go together. The only thing is that it is relative because they have developed faster than us. So unless Mr. Trump says that we should contain China, so he can say he has that luxury in the United States to say. But as an Indian, we cannot. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Bhim. You must be tired now. There is one more question for you. It's from Dr. Bidya Rani. She mentions that recently Prime Minister Modi had banned some of the applications of China, like made in China. Is it a good decision by the Prime Minister? And is it similar to non-cooperation movement like what Gandhi did? So what is your opinion on it?
Can you repeat, sir?
The question is that Prime Minister Modi recently banned some of the applications of China. So is it a good decision of the government of India or say Prime Minister Modi? And is it similar to non-cooperation movement like what Gandhi did? Like, is it what the participant is trying to say that like banning of the applications of China, does it have any similarity with non-cooperation movement or the concept made by Gandhi? So, like, what opinion do you have? That's what the participant is asking you.
Okay, that's a very actually trick question, but at the same time, very it can be a topic of research, like whether banning of apps is like Swadeshi movement done during the national freedom struggle, by Gandhi and the Indian National Congress. Actually, today, although at one level we can say that it is kind of a made in India, kind of Atmanirbhar, so to say, policy. It is more of a policy, but at the long run, in today's world and today's interaction, increasing, global technology, supply chain and all, I think in a long run we cannot succeed. So because of these international economic regimes and institutional framework, so either many of the countries today, so even if it's banned today, I can use VPN to access a lot of apps, stuff in China. So that I think, although at one level you can say, but not at at the holistic level. Yeah. So I think I'll stop here.
Thank you, Professor Bhim. Like, it must be very tiring for you, but there is one more question for you. So let me put it through. The participant has asked, like, if there is a sector where India should and can use it for making its position itself in medical diplomacy, restructuring the global supply chain by adding to supply of medical equipment so more innovative, making pharmaceuticals more global, what is your opinion about it? So to repeat the question.
Yeah. Actually, I can see the question. Yeah, I just read it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So with relations, okay, definitely China has a lot of respect with regard to India's generic medicines and all. I think there are a lot of movies, Chinese movies made on India's generic medicines being supplied or smuggled to China. And many of the Chinese who smuggled are also behind bars still, okay? Yeah, definitely, India can do that. But at the same time, what has happened is that a lot of our medical equipments or salts, those chemicals are being imported from China. Now, how can we be self-sufficient in that? So that is a big $1 million question. If we can, all those, establish service sectors, medical service sector supply chain, definitely we can do that. But with regard to economics of scale, we can do that. But the technological know-how still in China is much cheaper and more available, I would say. And if you really compare India-China's wage of the laborers, comparatively, China is quite cheap still, whereas not in India. So that is in relative terms, but at the same time today, when the other thing that I would just want to look into this question is with regard to skilling of our communities or forces, the young, So in India, although we have a demographic dividend, they say that a lot of young people are in India, but we don't have that skills or technical know-how really to produce or manufacture so much. But definitely in future, post Galwan trade embargo, or so to say, economic interactions against China from India actually has given an opportunity for Indians to really ponder upon and think how that India should devise its future policies in all the respect. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Professor Bhim. Thank you, Professor Bhim. It seems we do not have any more questions, and thank you to all the three eminent speakers for such enriching, insightful, and thought-provoking lectures. And it was a very...
I had a question to Dr. Dey.
Okay.
Yeah. If I may ask, just.
Okay.
Can I?
Yes.
As a panelist.
Yes. No problem.
Yeah. Dr. Dey.
বলুন.
Hello.
শুনছি.
Yeah. So, I understand little bit of Bengali, not much, but the passion with what you were speaking about was actually very, very, because from a civilizational study between what you brought about Rabindranath Tagore and the Shantiniketan tradition, Tan Yun Shan's contribution and others. So that has really actually helped, as a student like us who are dwelling on China studies to really actually study China. So you being there in Calcutta or Kolkata, so how do you see today's, post Galwan, what has really happened in the eastern, part of the country? Like, what are their reactions? You can actually, you need not, but this can be just a small query. Yeah, how do you see this from your perspective? Thank you.
স্যার, আমাদের একটা ব্যাপার, যেমন আমি মুক্তধারা যে ওয়াটারফল ড্রামার কথা বললাম, সেইখানে একটা বিষয় আছে যে দুটো যে রাজ্য পাশাপাশি, শিবতরা এবং উত্তরকোট, ঠিক আছে, সেইখানে উত্তরকোটের রাজা সে জলটা আটকে দিয়েছে, ফলে তাদের তৃষ্ণার জল তাদের চাষের জল সেটা হচ্ছে, এবং কি করছে যে শিবতরা এবং উত্তরকূটের নাগরিকদের মধ্যে একটা বিদ্বেষ ছড়ানোর চেষ্টা হচ্ছে, যে ওদের নাকটা চ্যাপটা, ওরা বড় অসভ্য, ওরা কথা বলে এরকম। কিন্তু ধনঞ্জয় বৈরাগী যে মানে বিলং করছে রবীন্দ্রনাথের ফিলোসফি আর কি, সে বলছে যে মানুষ একটাই, এবং মানুষ যদি কোনো রাষ্ট্র ব্যবস্থা যখন মারবে, সে যদি মাথা তুলে বলতে পারে যে লাগছে না, এই ভয়টা, এই নির্ভয় হওয়াটা যদি হয়, এবং ওই পাঁচিলটা যখন ভেঙে দিচ্ছে অভিজিৎ, তারপরে সেই অভিজিৎ সেই ওয়াটারফলে ভেসে যাচ্ছে ঠিকই, কিন্তু শিবতরা এবং উত্তরকূটের যে রাজা, এই সাধারণ মানুষ, নাগরিক, সিটিজেন যারা, তারা কিন্তু একটা জায়গায় আসছে। ফলে মানুষের সাথে মানুষের বিভেদের একটা প্রাচীর রাষ্ট্রনায়করা, পলিটিশিয়ানরা করার চেষ্টা করে, কিন্তু উভয় দেশে সাধারণ মানুষ কিন্তু শান্তি চায়, সাধারণ মানুষের মধ্যে কিন্তু ভালোবাসা আছে, আবেগ আছে, প্যাশন আছে, হ্যাঁ, ইমোশন আছে, হ্যাঁ, এবং তারা সবসময় কিন্তু এইটাই চায়। এটাই হচ্ছে আমার, অন্তত আমার পার্সপেক্টিভ ফিলিং, স্যার।
থ্যাংক ইউ স্যার।
ওয়েলকাম।
Thank you, Professor Apurba. Thank you, Professor Bhim, and thank you, Professor Chokey, for once again for such like enriching lectures, and it was a very lively and a fruitful session. So now I request upon the IQAC coordinator, Dr. Santanu Rana, for vote of thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhat. Two of the strongest partner of the SARC was recently involved in the clash, and we discussed a lot about that. So, however, hello.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
please continue.
Yeah, however, the adrenaline or the planning of this skirmish, maybe whatever it was very unprecedented. Today's webinar has helped us to understand the relations between India and China at multi-levels. In this regard, I would pledge my vote of thanks for Dr. Apurba Kumar Dey, Ms. Chokey N, Bhutia, and Dr. Bhim Subba on behalf of Raja Peary Mohan College. This platform has witnessed around 17 to 18 webinars in the last 2 months, for which we on behalf of the college would like to give a big round of applause to the MS Team support group for their support. They have really stood and they have taken their time out of their different activities for us to host different speakers for our students and for the general audience. So thank you all. Thank you to all the respected speakers and the attendees who have joined this session. I confirm my best wishes to all. Have a good evening. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Santanu. Thank you all. Thank you all the participants.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
And thank you to co-panel.